TDS's 8 game modes are all pretty easy to beat, but how fast can you beat them? I decided to speedrun them all, but there's one more thing. I added an extra challenge to all 8 game modes to make it more interesting, along with a goal to complete the challenge in under 4 hours. Would I be able to win it all? Probably not, but there's only one way to find out. The first game mode, of course, was easy mode, but there was a problem. I forgot to record the easy mode gameplay, which forced me to record it from the stream where I did the speedrun live, resulting in just terrible quality. Anyway, the special challenge for easy mode was that our main DPS was paintballers, and this was before the buff. Me and the team I gathered ended up killing Gravedigger at a decent time, giving us about a time of 10 minutes. For Molten mode, paintballer returns, as I was using only mid towers from each category. For advanced, I brought turrets since basically every tower in that category is good. Once again, this was before the buff. I also brought farm because I just can't live without money. To start, I placed my paintballer at a top tier spot for speedruns. Yeah, I think I just forgot I was supposed to be speedrunning. Every second those zombies are still walking is more time being wasted, so I made sure to get my next paintballer at the front. Paintballer had handled the early game very well, at least until the normal boss came. As we all know, paintballer isn't good with single enemies, but rather groups. Luckily, thanks to my farming, I was able to get a turret, which was most definitely going to carry the entire run. After that, I got a group of 4 level 3 Rocketeers, which I've only recently found are actually really good, like almost 100 DPS good. Anyways, into the mid game, our DPS was looking pretty good, and we were shredding the hordes thanks to Rocketeer. In the late game, things became a lot more of a struggle, but I got a max turret, which was very helpful. Upon Molten Boss's arrival, he wasn't getting shredded as fast as I had expected him to. We still managed to get a somewhat decent time though, could have been a lot better. Intermediate mode's challenge was to only use splash towers with supports. Yeah, I know, another boring challenge, but trust me, they get better. For the early game, I'd used Jester. He wasn't that bad, but speedy enemies almost always got past him. Upon the ghoul boss spotting, it was pretty clear we were going to leak him. To counter this, I got a pursuit down, though it didn't do much. Considering the goal was a speedrun, I was already making a terrible time. I wasted a good amount of time switching up my loadout before switching to Crossroads, which if you have a brain, you know is a terrible speedrunning map. The enemies have to walk down the corridor before they even reach my ace pilot. I got a Jester at the front, hoping to turn things around, but we still leaked. I ended up killing the ghoul boss this time. But more importantly, why is my ace pilot, with hidden detection, not attacking these hiddens? Apparently, while recording, there was a bug where ace pilot would just act like it couldn't detect hiddens. This resulted in some leaks and eventually our death. For my next attempt, I placed my ace pilots at the front. The rest of the game was just me mindlessly placing my ace pilots in the back. Even though, like in Lucille, this area would have been perfectly fine, until eventually, Patient Zero had spawned. His hill was getting shredded pretty darn fast, and I finally got the dub. At this point, I was a whopping hour into the challenge. My original goal was to finish all the main modes in under an hour, though honestly, considering the added challenge and my tendency to play the game casually, I should have expected this. Hopefully Fallen doesn't take nearly as long. For Fallen mode, I'd made the first decent challenge. For every tower I use, the tower slot I put them in would judge how many of those towers I could place. I've got a feeling this has been done before, but nevertheless, I attempted it. For the first attempt, I decided to use 1 Frost Blaster, 2 Elf Camps, 3 Commanders, 4 Accelerators, and 5 Engineers. I got 2 Elf Camps placed for the early game, but skipped every wave to keep it fast. In retrospect, this is still not the fastest method, but it worked fine. Even in the early game, the enemies pushed far, but I got a Frost Blaster down to help out. Just ignore that sentry over there. The Frost Blaster is carrying. Fallen ended up quickly pushing past our defenses, and was barely stopped by my Elf Camps. Unfortunately, Engineer's lack of hidden detection meant that the Shadow Boss rushed into our base, resulting in a loss. Keep in mind, I was meant to be speedrunning this, and this attempt alone had wasted 10 minutes. On the next attempt, we were shredding a lot of the enemies closer to the base, and at one point, even spawn killing. I went for 2 max Elf Camps a lot earlier on, then focused on Engineers. The Shadow Boss was quickly dealt with on this attempt, but glitches were not. I'm so glad these guys were kicked out of the new Fallen mode. Absolute menaces. Re-entering the lobby, I switched out my loadout a bit, now using 1 DJ, 2 Frost Blasters, 3 Commanders, 4 Farms, and 5 Engineers. I don't really know why I was so set on bringing Frost Blaster. I could have swapped out for Accelerators for more DPS, but whatever. I used Engineer for the early game and also did some farming on the side. I quickly found out why it was a good idea to bring Frost Blaster, as it carried for glitches. It was close, but we even brought down the tank. Into the late game, we were doing a really solid job. I had gotten all of my towers placed in max. It wasn't long before the Fallen King had spawned. He quickly got past the first section of our defense, meaning I had to quickly micro my engineers to the back. We managed to kill him before he reached the base, garnering me the win, though it had taken 25 minutes. Overall, falling alone had taken the whole hour. My original goal of under 4 hours was seeming farther and farther away. Considering that from here on out, the challenges will only get harder and harder, I don't really know why I thought I could get it done. Let's just hope that Pizza Party isn't as much of a pain. Pizza Party's challenge was pretty simple. We just had to do Lost Souls. By we, I mean me, Samiho, and Kinu, who were helping me with this challenge. The early game, as expected, was a breeze, and we just barely managed to kill the scout boss. Later on, monkeys started pushing, and our DPS wasn't enough to stop them. This time, I started with engineers early on, which performed well, until we leaked more monkeys and died again. The third attempt, however, was definitely the charm, as we shredded much more than ever before. This attempt I made it to the balloon boys, but thanks to my mortars, they weren't a problem. As we pushed deeper into the game, I worked on maxing my mortars, but more importantly, I got a guest scout down. And look at that, he's telling you to subscribe? Anyway, upon the Necromancer boss's arrival, we promptly died to him. It was clear we needed a fourth player, and we got that in the form of Darkspear. For most of the game, we were pretty much just chilling, as we shredded the hordes. We made it to Wax the Fox himself, or at least his exoskeleton. Our raw DPS was way too much for him to handle, and he quickly met his end, only having took about an hour and a half. One more thanks to Samio, Kinu, and Darkspear for helping, which I'm going to need a lot of to get through the Badlands. The challenge for Badlands 2 was to complete it in under 25 minutes, but I had to bring only starter towers. As you can see here, I originally intended for us to do quick draw, but then I remembered I had to do this with viewers. I gathered a team and we had a pretty bad start. Also, if you hadn't noticed, I used Golden Soldier because the people have spoken and he counts as a starter tower. Anyways, let's skip over all the basic Badlands 2 gameplay, and it's wave 30 and the tank is about to spawn. Unfortunately, his sprint was successful and he reached the base, resulting in a loss. In our next attempt, we somehow played even worse, letting the abnormal boss reach the intersection. Somehow shadows also began to push. Thankfully, we could at least get past wave 30, and our defense was looking good for wave 40. The gunslinger spawned, and things ended up not looking as good as I expected until a teammate nuked him. Pushing with all the DPS we had, we were just able to manage him, and our time was just above 25 minutes. So I decided to pull some strings and let myself move on anyway. My sanity was rapidly deteriorating. At least this time it had only taken an hour, but now one of the worst challenges was coming up. Matchmaking sucks. We all know this, which is why I had to be hardcore just using matchmaking teammates. And let's just say I would reach my limit in the process. My first team was looking pretty good, as they had towers like Brawler for the early game. We were able to chill for most of the early waves, allowing me to greed with farms. The iconic Mega Slow was the first hardcore DPS check, which we easily breezed by. The 3 shadow bosses on wave 25, not so much. After this round, Scarzor abandoned us, and for some reason, I decided to restart and attempt a duo. Somehow, in a duo, me and Nerd managed to get past wave 25, but we lost to wave 29. I gathered a new team in Noob and Joe, and we were doing pretty good DPS wise. Well, at least I thought we were. In our next attempt, we were prepared for the shadow bosses, but I would lose to them again. And again. And one more time for good measure. Finally, we managed to kill them all and move on. We ended up making it pretty far, and we're still shredding at wave 38. That was until I saw something that shook me to the core. One of my teammates had all level 4 farms. We were still able to get to the Fallen Swordmaster and defeat him despite my teammates' less than optimal farming. The same went for the Fallen King, and I was getting hopeful we could actually win this. The Void Reaver spawned, and we weren't killing him as fast as I had hoped. At 75k HP, he would reach the base, though, to be fair, I should have microed more. At this point, I'd spent 2.5 hours on hardcore, and I was going insane. I decided to let some viewers, my friend Quackshot and Hitman the First, help me out. We ended up making it to the Void Reaver, and all our DPS was locked on him. We were shredding his HP a lot faster than in my previous round, and we managed to get the win. At this point, it'd been 8 hours of TDS. I decided to call it a day and to finish the run with Polluted Wastelands 2 tomorrow. The challenge for Polluted Wastelands 2 was intended to be the hardest, but nothing would top hardcore. The challenge was pretty simple. We can't sell towers and we can't bring economy towers. I gathered a team of viewers in the lobby and got straight into the gameplay. The first problem we encountered was that one of our teammates seemed to repeatedly be making the mistake of selling towers for no reason. After several rounds and much wasted time, we booted him off and got a new best. The only thing left for us to do now was to try not to die. I started working on my accelerators early on in preparation for the amalgamation, which allowed us to shred it. I began to realize that of all game modes, Polluted was the worst for this challenge. With its high HP and tanky enemies, we made a ton of money, and we didn't even need eco. Other than some slight paranoia that a tower had been sold, it was typical Polluted gameplay. We ended up making it to the Polluted monster, and since we were able to max out all of our DPS, it was over before it even begun. Well, that's it. Me and my team were able to conquer the wastelands, right? Well, after it ended the stream, Geographical Future sent me a clip that would absolutely devastate me. As he places his engineer, one of the engineers mysteriously disappears. The only conclusion there is to make is that someone sold it. But I'd already ended the timer, you know. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to do it again just for that, right? So I decided not to redo, which makes my final time 10 hours, 6 minutes, and 49 seconds. An absolutely terrible time. But hey, I had fun. I'll see you guys next time. Let's just hope you don't have to wait 3 months again.